Call the meeting to order. If we can please rise, if you're able to sing the national anthem.
There's no such thing as a perfect writer.
Madam Clerk, introduction of addendum or delegation items.
Just a quick note that on item 7 we did approve this at the last meeting, so these notes are just for information.
Thank you. Confirmation of agenda, mover and seconder. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Beauregard. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Any disclosures of interest this evening? Councillor Bodner.
Item 7, even though the clerk has said we have okayed it, we're going to vote on that tonight, and it deals with wine and beer sales in stores. I may take advantage of that with our store at some point, so I'm confident I'm going to vote on that.
Is he fine with that? Because we've already approved it when you were away. So this is just accepting correspondence. That's all you're doing. You're not actually making a decision on it. That's already been made.
Okay, then hold that.
Yeah, if it comes back, then you can get involved. But all you're doing is accepting this as correspondence.
Fair enough.
All right? Good. Thanks, Councillor. Adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 05-19 held on January the 28th, 2019. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wells, welcome back. And Councillor Demery, any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Items determining separate discussion. Councillor Demery.
Item 1, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other items? Councillor Bodner.
Item 3, Mr. Mayor.
3. Okay. Approval of items not requiring separate discussion. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Bruno, Councillor Beauregard. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have 3 presentations this evening. I will be going over to the podium for the first presentation. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're here to recognize 2 gentlemen who have given their time to our community. I would like to ask Jack O'Neill and Larry Ohm to come up at this time, please. Come on up. He looks younger than you, though. Yeah. So 22 years ago, these gentlemen had a vision of a place for seniors or anyone who was alone to share a meal and friendship on Christmas Day. This started the Port Colborne Community Christmas Dinner. This dinner provides residents an opportunity to enjoy a wonderfully prepared meal and meet new acquaintances instead of being alone or having to cook. This dinner takes time earlier in the year to plan, recruit volunteers to assist in cooking, serving, and of course the cleanup. Businesses and individuals are approached to donate food and gifts. There are residents whose children have grown up to know only that Christmas dinner is served first when it was served first time at the Royal Canadian Legion and now at Port Colborne High School. Numbers have grown from 65 attending the first dinner to approximately 200 attending this past Christmas. Jack and Larry, we thank you for having the vision to create this wonderful community event and the fortitude to keep it going for 22 years. We have a certificate of recognition to present each of you. So I'll just grab one of these here, please. So both certificates are the same. So Jack O'Neill is the first one. So for 22 years of bringing Port Colborne residents together at our community Christmas dinner on behalf of members of council and the citizens of the city of Port Colborne, we thank you for making a difference in the lives of the residents through your generous donation of time. You are an amazing city ambassador. Thank you. Thank you. And for Larry, it's exactly the same wording. Thank you, Larry. So we also know that behind every man who takes on a task of this magnitude, there is a woman who holds the family strong and explains why Daddy isn't home on Christmas morning. Helen O'Neill could not be with us tonight, but she has stood beside Jack throughout the past 22 years. And at this time, I'd like to ask Kathy Olm to come forward. Larry's lovely wife.
You're going to make me pay for this.
So Kathy and my wife actually work together at the Vaughan Hospital.
Yeah.
So at this time, if I can present Kathy with a nice bouquet of flowers.
Sure.
Thank you for giving up your husband. And for Jack, if you could take this and deliver that to Helen on our behalf, I'd really appreciate that.
I sure will. Thank you very much.
Okay? And they have passed the reins on for this great event in our city to Gloria and John Simon, who are actually here this evening, as well as all kinds of other volunteers that help out. So, you know, you can see how everybody appreciates all the good work for all these years you guys did. And we hope that they will continue just like you did. So, again, on our behalf, thank you very much. Thank you. We can get a picture of you two up at the front. Okay? Come on up.
Picture at the front.
One on one side, one on the other. Make sure the chains are fine.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Just one more. Thanks, guys.
All set? Thanks. That's really good. Oh, yeah, we're going back. Don't worry, we're not finished. No, we aren't finished.
Good.
So, as Jack asked, either one of you or both of you can add something to this evening.
Thank you. Can I speak briefly? For 22 years, to put on this lunch or this dinner, Christmas dinner, we had a lot of help. If it wasn't for the businesses like Port Colborne Taxi donated free rides, 22 years, Oscom's, Boccio's, all these different stores, No Frills, Sobeys, Food Basic, all helped. And there was a lot of people that made things, brought them in, cakes. You went home that night and that's all you seen was cake. Everybody fought to get there, my wife especially. God bless her. I'm sorry she can't be here tonight, that she can't come out in the cold. But my buddy behind me, the short fella here, He's a real gentleman, and I've been proud to have known Larry, worked with Larry, and if he calls me and asks me anything else, I'll kill him. But he's been my closest and friend, 22 years doing this, and his wife, Kathy. We have enjoyed it tremendously, and I know Gloria and John will do a good job. And we can't forget Mike Fagan. You know, when you had to call up, you had to talk to that guy to come and volunteer. So we stayed out of that. So to his wife and to Mike, thanks a million, guys. You did a great job. You're still going to do a great job. We know that. So thank you very much for everything. And Larry, you got something to say? Because I don't have any more.
Go ahead.
I gotta mark the calendar. Jack ran out of words. Just real quickly, I want to say thank you. We did not start this event for recognition. We've been hiding in plain sight, just in the background. Me and Jack do the running around, get organized, get the people in the kitchen. Jack did most of the work getting our sponsors, and that day we just stand back and watch it go. We've had people with us for 22 years, like Mike and Marianne, coordinating the volunteers. Sandy and Gail, our two prime cooks, have been with us for 22 years. Couldn't have started and couldn't keep going without them. And I was trying to figure out today, we've got approximately, rough guess, 30 or more volunteers that have been coming out for 10 years or more. A lot of it full families. They've made it a family tradition to come out. This is how they give back. They come Christmas Day and they serve meals to other people. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that supported us. We're still around. We're not going to run away. We're not going to be running around the days before and not getting up at 6 o'clock Christmas Day to get our stuff done at home so we can go to school. We'll show up about 11:30. Have a good time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jack. And that's what volunteering is about in this city. As the gentleman said, it's really not just for them, it's about for all those people that have helped them for the past 22 years. So again, on behalf of City Council, myself, thank you. So our next presentation is Nick Rosati, Traffic Systems Program Manager, and Peter Vujic, Supervisor, and with regards to providing information about PXOs in Niagara and the Port Colborne pedestrian crossover. Gentlemen, come on up. There's a little red button on the speaker if you want to press that, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors, and City of Port Colborne staff. My name is Peter Vujic. I'm the Supervisor of Corridor Safety at the Niagara Region, and I've been there for 28 years. My colleague Nick Rosati, he'll introduce himself later on through the presentation. So we're here to do an informative presentation on pedestrian crossovers. Next, oh, you got it right there. So pedestrian crossovers are basically what I want to show you is what you have is a controlled and uncontrolled crossing. A controlled crossing is when a pedestrian is crossing at a stop sign, stoplight, yield sign, usually where there's a marked cross walk, or school crossing. Uncontrolled crossings are locations where pedestrians cross without the aid of any traffic control, and drivers are not required to stop for pedestrians at those locations. So in 2016, the Ontario government introduced a new regulation, two different kinds of pedestrian crossings. The first one is a level 1 type crossing, which is the overhead yellow signs with the flashing beacons in them. They're the ones that were used in Toronto, and you still might see a few of those. So those are level 1. Level 2 are pedestrian crossovers that are distinctly defined by the prescribed use of different regulatory signs, which you see up there, warning signs, pavement markings, and in some cases, the rapid flashing beacons. So this is just a typical layout. It's very familiar, it's very similar to what you have out on Clarence Street. I just thought I'd illustrate it. Again, it's the signs, pavement markings, and on occasion flashing rapid beacons. This, unfortunately, is kind of hard to see, but this is just a flow chart in determining whether staff should be recommending one for installation or not. And this does take into account social engineering, I'm going to call it, because it's not strictly related on numbers, on how many pedestrians are going to be using it. You could install one based on connectivity and everything else where you deem necessary. Again, these are the different types of level 2 crossings, and again, staff are aware you base it on the amount of volume that the roadway carries and the speed limit and how many lanes there are. So this is the one I was talking about, the Toronto style. This is a level 1 crossing, and it's got the X, the yellow X signs with flashing beacons. So those have been around for probably 30, 40 years. Niagara region never had any of those on any municipal roadways, MTO roadways, or regional roads anywhere within the region. So now these are the new types that were introduced in 2016. And these are your level 2 type crossings. So this type B is, I'm going to call it the Cadillac of the PXOs. So you have your overhead signs, your roadside signs, pavement markings, warning signs leading up to the crossing, the rapid flashing beacons, and that's the one that's installed out on Clarence. A type C, again, this is all based on traffic volume and laneways and speed limits. This is a type C, which just has the regulatory signs and the rapid flashing beacons and the pavement markings, so there's no overhead signage here. And then we go to a type D, which is strictly signs, pavement markings. So there are different types, again. The big thing here is, because they're fairly new, it's the public education on them. In 2019, the region is committed to enhancing education for PXOs. We've implemented a few of them on regional roads where staff have gone out with the Niagara Regional Police, where the police have stopped vehicles approaching the crosswalk and handed out brochures explaining on how to use these, what the driver is required to do and what the pedestrian is required to do. So this just shows that, you know, pedestrians have to show the driver the intent that they want to cross, usually by, you know, indicating with their arm or whatever. And the key thing here is to have eye contact with the driver and ensure that the driver stops. So again, the driver is required to stop because it is controlled, so the pedestrian has the right of way at these crossings. And the regulation that gives them the right of way is the actual signage, it's not the flashing beacons. So it's all the regulatory signs that are regulated through the Highway Traffic Act. So again, the region is hoping, well, we will be doing some new educational campaigns this year, so hopefully we could collaboratively work with City of Port Colborne staff to educate people on it. And I'm going to pass it over to Nick here to go through the design process.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nick Rosati, Traffic Systems Program Manager at the region. I've been involved in working at the region for over 30 years now. So first of all, when PXOs were introduced we figured that a design would be required for its installation. And we decided to follow the same model as we used for traffic signal installations. So we currently provide this service to all municipalities in the region, as well as the MTO and the Niagara Parks Commission. The region currently maintains every one of the 467 signalized intersections in the region, and we're involved whenever changes to any of those intersections are required. All of these locations are designed and operate using the same standards to maintain driver familiarity across the region. All municipalities, the Niagara Parks Commission and MTO have also adopted these standards, which ensures consistency at all locations regardless of jurisdiction. So we felt that this was the best model to design this new device, the PXO, and we should follow the same model, particularly because they are such a new device and our drivers and pedestrians will need to be educated on. As Pete mentioned, we're currently designing 2 types of PXO installations for municipal and regional installations. They are the Level 2 Type B and Level 2 Type C crossings. The main difference, as you can see from the graphics, and Pete also showed you, was the Type B has overhead pedestrian crossing signs, and Type C uses roadside pedestrian crossing signs only. As I mentioned, we follow the same process for PXO designs as if we were installing a traffic signal. We would receive a request from one of the local municipalities, such as yourselves. They typically ask for our opinion on proposed location, geometrics, and layout. We then complete a preliminary design where we start by locating poles and signs on a plan. We bring up any location issues or conflicts with the municipality. Then a detailed design is completed, and we circulate that to municipal staff for their review and approval. We then purchase the equipment and have it installed. After we activate the device, then either myself or my staff would go out and just kind of observe the operation, make sure everything is functioning according to design. Here's some photos of typical installations that we've done throughout the region. I don't know if that comes out clear. This one is located on Regional Road 20 in Smithville. This was our first PXO installation. So after doing some observations in the field, we made a few minor adjustments here and there. For example, we increased the size of the overhead pedestrian signs, just because of the long sight lines at this location. There's not a whole lot of background there. The smaller signs were just being lost in the sky. This one here is on Sodom Road in Niagara Falls. A similar installation with double-sided overhead signs and the flashers over top of the pole-mounted pedestrian signs. This one here we did for the city of St. Catharines is located on Vine Street. And here they've added signs mounted on flex stakes. You can see them on the center line of the road, just at the Shark's Teeth pavement markings. And those were installed because they have a dual left turn lane approaching this crossing. So they just wanted to make the drivers more aware that the left turners need to be aware of the possible pedestrians crossing. And last discussions with the city, they weren't sure if they were going to leave those flex stake signs after next year. They're talking about possibly removing them. This one here was installed on Ormond Street in the city of Thorold. This one happens to be a solar-powered unit. You'll see the solar panels on the top of the poles there. Again, same design principles. They all basically look the same. This one was our most recent installation for City of Niagara Falls. This was on McLeod Road. They have a trail that crosses McLeod Road right in front of a high school. This one we installed for City of St. Catharines on St. Paul Street. Very shiny picture, brand new asphalt, new pavement markings. great installation. Looks like a brochure for a PXO crossing. But this one, you'll see it does not have the overhead signing just because of the narrow road width. There's a lot happening there visually. We felt that the flashing beacons over top of the pole-mounted signs was sufficient. This is the design drawing that we created for the Clarence Street crossing. Again, it shows the pedestrian crossing on the east side of the intersection. It would also show pole locations, the advanced warning signs that Pete mentioned, what the distances are. It basically lays out the entire installation. I don't know if you can make it out or not, but it also shows the tactile pads to make it AODA compliant on all four corners there. I have to apologize. A little bit of an embarrassing error on my part was the your handles. I think the hard copies. This slide mentioned the different intersection. I made that correction on the electronic copy, but I think on the hard copy it was there was an error in there. But anyways, this was a photo we took probably a few weeks after the PXO was activated. This is facing west. Again, we have good visibility of the crossing. Those overhead signs are, you know, very hard to miss. And it shows the required pavement markings and the flashers over top of the pole-mounted signs. This is the same location facing east. Same thing. This one, we just happen to have a pedestrian in the crosswalk that had actually pushed the button, and the flashers were activated there. Again, good visibility, no issues with that, and seemed to operate okay. It was a little new device, so we found from our observations that a lot of people were crossing mid-block. They'd be crossing either just before or just after the crossing, and a lot of that, I think, comes down to pedestrian familiarity and driver behavior as well. And that's it. Thank you for the opportunity, for allowing Pete and I to come and present to you guys tonight. Appreciate that.
Thanks, gentlemen. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Clayla.
Can I just ask you, have you had any concerns from any other communities? I know that we received...
Your microphone, Councillor.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just wondered if any other communities have asked you regarding concerns that they've had from people, residents of the community. I know we've had a lot of people that are saying they're not happy with the crossing. I keep saying to them exactly what you're saying, familiarity, getting used to it, and learning what it all entails. Are there any other of the communities that have asked for changes or are doing things differently?
John?
So I can answer that. I sit on the Roscoe Committee, which is the Road Safety Committee of Ontario, where it's all different municipalities that come together, and we have discussions like this. The town of Milton has installed, I believe, 20 to 30 locations of PXOs. They did a lot of before and after studies for compliance, and what they noticed is when they put the one slide that Nick showed where that yellow flex sign was in the middle of the crosswalk in the pavement, the compliance went up to, like, I think it was 89% where drivers were stopping. Prior to that, it was down in the 60s. So again, through education and additional signage, there was a higher compliance with that sign. But other municipalities do have issues as well. They're fairly new in Ontario, so and it's just a driver behavior here, because Ontario is a province where pedestrians never had the right of way, whereas out west and out east, pedestrians have the right of way, so they can step off anywhere, a car will stop. So it's changing the behavior of drivers here.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our presenters. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was really quite informative, so it's very helpful. The complaints that I've heard from people regarding our crosswalk is the location. they had expected it would be on the west side of Catherine Street, and it is in fact on the east side. But looking at the drawing, I would say that makes good sense to me, because the way the parking lays out, that would be incredibly congested and really unsafe if it was on the west side. And I'm just wondering if you could maybe speak to that, and was that a consideration?
Yeah, so I can answer that one. Again, like I mentioned in our design process, we would circulate our ideas to city staff. I believe our design staff had originally designed it on the west side, then in discussions with staff. And I don't remember all the details, but it was decided to install it on the east side and with city approval as well.
Okay, Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the excellent presentation. Question with respect to your first comment about the numbers, or perhaps the traffic study. Was this more installed on the basis of social engineering in terms of demand?
Our first, through you, Mr. Mayor, our first installation was Regional Road 20 in Smithville, and that was all the result of a new school being built out there with capital improvements of putting roundabouts. It was more in the rural section coming into the urban section, so there are roundabouts that are going in. There was a whole bunch of other traffic calming that went out there, electronic speed display sign. And we found that the new legislation came out. It's a fraction of the cost of installing an intersection pedestrian signal. So we went with that, and moving forward, that's what we're going to be putting in most cases. Again, you could probably install 5 of these for the price of one intersection pedestrian signal.
I guess if I could further, maybe I didn't quite say it right, was this more, this installation, based on public demand, request from the city, maybe that's more to Chris, or was it done on the basis of what we're used to, traffic counts, numbers, pedestrian counts, etc.?
I could answer that, Pete. It was solely based, from our perspective, is solely based on a request from the city.
Okay.
Yeah. So they came to us, and you know, we worked closely with city staff. Said, design us a PXO for this location. So that decision had been made, and we were approached to do the design for them.
Great. Oh, just one last question, if I could, Mr. Mayor. The one that I'm used to seeing has always been on Regional 24 in Vineland by the school there. But is that similar to this, or that's sort of the next version up?
Exactly. That would be the next level of pedestrian crossing. That's known as an intersection pedestrian signal, where the driver sees the typical traffic signal, red, yellow, green. Everybody knows what the red light means, and they stop. Compliance is a lot higher for that, but again, like both Pete and I have mentioned before, it's driver behavior. They come across a flashing yellow light. There's nothing in the Highway Traffic Act that says you must stop. There's legislation around the PXO saying that if there's a pedestrian present, but the pedestrian, as we all know, they can push the button, it's a flashing yellow light. Pedestrian is long gone, halfway down the street, and the lights are still flashing, and the driver becomes, you know, there's no pedestrian around, he sees these flashing yellow lights, and he just drives through it. Where at a IPS or a PPS, it's a red traffic signal. They're not going to go even though the pedestrian is down the street, right? They won't run the red light.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. A couple of things with this. I noticed, actually, in one diagram, it says Clarence and King facing west.
Yeah, that was
it shows a truck in front of, unloading in front of on a corner there. And that's one of the problems is there's trucks that unload outside of where they're supposed to park. And when you're coming east towards the bridge, it does block your view of the yellow light and the sign. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the roadside sign.
Yeah, and if you look on the other side, heading for the bridge, the yellow lights, when they flash, the background is also yellow from the buildings, the old, for the Royal Bank, I think it is. And the contrast isn't really there, that bright. Because if you get the sun in that, the sunny day, the buildings yellow and your signage yellow, and your lights are yellow. And that's one of the problems I saw. And also, on sunrise and sunset, especially sunset, people are heading from the bridge towards, heading west. When the sun's starting to come down, it is very bright. And I've seen people go right through that thing. You know, I've stopped and I've seen 3 cars come the other way after I've already stopped. And whether it's, you know, it's like the roundabout, I understand that. I was even in an accident in a roundabout this summer. And I know it's a high accident area. People do have to get used to it, but I would suggest for if you want to come out with, so I'm sure you come out in the spring on a market day, that's probably going to be the best example you're ever going to get here. But maybe also we could have our bylaw officers watch the parking there also if the truck's unloading, and just give our drivers a little bit more, you know, notice before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. Any further questions? Just one question. My son was in Paris, Ontario, and they have 2 of these, but they're the old style with the old round lights with a little ball cap on it. But they had 4. They had 2 on either post facing each way, but then they had also 1 at the top facing each way, where these ones only use the poles as opposed to adding flashers either way on the top. Is there a reason for that, or just the way the province designed them?
Yeah, just the way the province has designed them, basically, and then that's what's available to us in the OTM. And from our perspective, like I mentioned, we try to keep as consistent as possible throughout the region, and the province is trying to do the same job across the province. It's a lot more difficult province-wide, but from our point of view, yeah, we try to follow Ontario traffic manuals wherever possible. They are guidelines, they're not legislated, yeah. But yeah, just to maintain consistency, and like I said, because this device is so new, we don't want people from Welland seeing something different in Niagara Falls.
And I think it's the best idea is to keep consistency.
Yeah.
So if I could add to that, Mr. Mayor, it could be, I Googled that in Paris, and I believe the type they have is the type 1, which is the old PXO style with the X's and the flashing beacons above, the Toronto style one, which is up on the screen right there.
Yeah, because the yellow lights that are on top of that were also the yellow lights that were on the pole, which I have pictures over here. Just let me find that if you don't mind. Yeah, they were just an X, like similar to ours here, yellow X sign with a black X, and the light beside it coming east or west or north south, depending on where the road was. And then on the sides was the same as opposed to the really high bright flashing light was just that yellow intermittent flashing beacon. Right. As I say, those have been around for eons. So I mean, I know this is new, and you do want consistency. So, but I think if anything comes out of this council or what the public brings to us, I'm sure we'll send it to the ministry. Because as you say, you want to keep consistent. But I mean, one issue I find with our light, and if you look at all your signs other than Port Colborne were clear sailing either way. There weren't buildings, parked cars. They were on highways or trees. Where we're in a downtown core, unlike St. Catharines, where theirs is all brand new, where ours will be that way soon, we hope. We do have a number of trees and trucks and things like that. So obviously, when we do our CIP downtown, we'll, this is something we have to take into consideration with regards to the approaches on where we put stuff, other signage, other poles, and obviously greenery. So, seeing any more questions? Councillor.
Mr. Mayor. Just adding to what you're saying, I think that's part of the difficulty. Like you said, those pictures are so clear, and I went out on market day, and a lot of times if there's trucks that are unloading at the places at the corner in front, and you're coming the other way, they're blocking those signs, and I think that's what a lot of people are finding, that they don't even see them. That's what I'm hearing from the drivers. On the other hand, what we haven't touched on is that some people just don't like the location of where we moved it to that other corner. And I wasn't here, so I don't know the reasons why it was done, but there's been suggestions for us to have it moved. I don't know that would even be possible or is even common sense to do it at this point, but I think that there's a kind of a mixed bag here because they thought it was going to be on the other corner. It got moved to the other side, and now with the trucks there in front of the places on the corner blocking, and like Mr. Bagu had said, you know, when the lights, different things, I think people are just finding it. It is something new. Wasn't quite what people, I think, had hoped it was going to be, and it's a learning curve for all of us, I think, more than anything, trying to figure it all out. But thank you for coming and explaining it to us.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome. Okay, seeing that, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So our next presentation is Brad Whitelaw. He's the Program Manager, Policy and Planning at the Region of Niagara for waste management with regards to the collection options for the next waste collection contract. Good day, sir.
Good evening, City of Port Colborne Council and staff and members of the general public. As the Mayor had mentioned, my name is Brad Whitelaw. I am Program Manager with Niagara Region's Waste Management Division. I have been with the region for 29 years between different Waterloo and Niagara regions, so plenty of experience with waste management. And I want to thank you very much for allowing me to the opportunity to come out and talk to you about Niagara region's proposed collection options for the next collection contract that we're looking at. Before I begin, I'd like to give you a little bit of a background of the proposed collection options and why it is that we are looking at them for this collection contract. Niagara Region's next waste collection contract is going to begin for recycling organics and garbage in 2021. Sounds like it's a long time away, but it really isn't with regards to the fact that we have to tender out that contract, excuse me, and then the successful bidder needs at least a year to acquire the vehicles for that. So as a result, that's this year that we need to put a tender out on the street for the bidders to be able to get their bids in, and then the region to evaluate those bids. As part of the process last year, what we did is we went to council and received approval to look at various proposed collection options, which are the ones that we started with for consultation. We received that back in March, and then as soon as we received council approval in April, we started the consultation process. Later on in the presentation, I will go over that. Due to the respect of time for council, I won't go into a lot of detail with that. It's in your package there. You'll see the type of consultation that we did go through, but I will be happy to answer any questions if you still have it from that. So the local area municipalities themselves, we've essentially been consulting with off and on for the past year. This consultation wraps up with formal consultation requested by this February 20th. We require all the comments in so we can get the final report that's going to be going to council for their approval in March. The proposed collection options themselves were being considered for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Niagara Region needs to improve its participation in its diversion programs or its recycling and organics program. The second thing, what we're trying to do is potential cost avoidance for the next collection contract. We know the next collection contract is going to be more expensive. It'll be 10 years old by that time, so costs are going to go up. So naturally what we're trying to do is look at minimizing those costs from going up. What we also did is we looked at the results of curbside audits and tried to match the service level that's being utilized there with what's required. What we also did is we looked at the best practices of Niagara's 13 municipal comparators, which essentially goes around the Golden Horseshoe. So Hamilton, Waterloo, Toronto, Peel, Halton, all the way up through Ottawa, everybody there. We looked at what they're doing and what we could implement for Niagara Region. What we're also trying to do is improve program communication to residents and businesses. We have a lot of different service levels that are provided depending on what type of sector that you're in, whether you're in multi-residential, low-density residential, businesses that are inside or outside of a designated business area, a lot of different service levels. So we're trying to, for this next collection contract, standardize that as much as we can. These next few slides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through what were the proposed collection options. Some of them we've now gone to regional council in January, and some of those have been modified there. So this is what came now to council for its approval there. The first option that we were looking at was every other week garbage collection for the residential sector and for the IC&I, which is industrial, commercial, institutional, and mixed-use properties located outside of a designated business area. So if you were a business that was inside the designated business area, you would continue to receive weekly garbage collection as far as the base collection. The collection for recycling and organics would continue to remain weekly. That would not change. So it would only be garbage collection that would be going every other week. I also want to stipulate that the garbage container limits for those properties would double. So over the course of that 2-week period, you would still have the same volume of garbage. It would just be 1 week you would have no garbage, and the next week it would be doubled. So that volume wouldn't change. The garbage limit exemptions as well for children in diapers, like home daycares, medical and group homes, special events would continue. There would be no change in that collection service as well. The second thing that we looked at was regards to the mandatory use of clear bags for garbage collection, with the option of allowing an opaque privacy bag inside of that bag for any personal items. The clear bag program, though, would be for all sectors, whether you're a business or residential, anything inside and outside the DBA. Niagara Region's Public Works Committee amended this. When we went to council in, in January, we had said that we weren't recommending that based on the initial stakeholder consultation that we had with residents and businesses. It was clear that they did not want that. Public Works Committee had amended that at the January 8th meeting for our recommendation to not include it. They wanted it back on the table. So that's why it was in this recommendation for that to remain as an option to be considered. The key drivers, though, for every other week garbage collection and clear bags mainly are both the same thing there, is to extend the existing life of landfill capacity. We have a finite limited landfill capacity that we have in Niagara Region. Also what it does is it's a contract cost avoidance. Every other week garbage collection does have cost savings associated with that. And what it also does is it's the key driver to having residents increase their participation in the diversion program. So the recycling and organics, naturally with those municipalities that we consulted with, as soon as they went with every other week garbage collection, their organics and their recycling programs definitely increased. When I referred to in the first slides there is the audits that we did. Back in 2015 and 16, we did curbside audits of all residential properties across Niagara Region. We did subsets in each municipality. What we found was that nearly 50% of low-density residential, a typical low-density residential garbage bag was organics material. So that's material that should be in the green bin program that's not in the green bin program. And 14% of that's recycling. So really what you're left with is that small 36% that should be in garbage. So if residents were fully utilizing their green bin and their recycling programs, you would have a very small percentage that is left for the garbage stream. What we also found is that the IC&I or mixed use audits also show that their diversion programs were underutilized, and I'll be showing that in a few more slides from here. Other municipality benefits, as I mentioned to a little bit earlier there, is increased waste diversion. That's first and foremost. They ranged between 6% in the region of Peel as high as 16% in Durham, depending on whether they also implemented other diversion programs at the same time as going with every other week garbage collection. That's what happened with Durham. They implemented their green bin program at the same time as going every other week, so they had a 16% overall diversion increase for the year. The City of Markham, which is our example of a municipality that implemented clear bag program, their diversion rate, they first implemented every other week garbage collection and then implemented later on the clear bag program. They had a combined diversion rate increase of 35%. They're right now at 80% diversion rate, which is just amazing. They had 6% additional increase by going from every other week opaque bags to every other week clear bag. Also, the next one is there's the contract savings there. They range for a smaller municipality like the city of Barrie at $200,000, to upwards of $12 million for a large municipality like the region of Peel. The region of Waterloo recently implemented every other week garbage collection, so there are our municipal comparative of size. They had 1.5 million annual increases with regards to going with every other week garbage collection. So there's savings to be had. Mainly that's in the form of less fleet being required on their routes. The third proposed option that we're looking at for the next collection contract is the establishment of a 4-item per unit limit for large item collection. Currently, there is no limit on the number of large items that a resident can book. The only limitation is that they can't book it for move-outs or anything like that. But if they want, they could have unlimited large item collection. What we're trying to do is basically establish a limit, maximum number that they can put out for collection there. At the same time, what we're looking at as part of our large item collection is the elimination of appliances and scrap metal collection at low-density residential properties, which are the only properties that qualify for this service. Niagara Region's Public Works Committee amended that at their January 8th meeting, so they said that they wanted us to also provide a price for discontinuation as well as continuation of that service. So we would have pricing for both moving into the next RFP. The key drivers for that is the cost avoidance by having a limited service. If you go out right now with no limits there, a contractor can expect any number of bins there or large items to be out there for collection, which drives that cost up there because they don't know what they're going to be expecting at the curb. What we found is that 93% of the properties that are using the large item collection service there were setting out 4 items or less to begin with. And 92% of those total bookings were for 4 items. With regards to appliances and scrap metal, the tonnages that the region collected from 10 years ago have dropped by 94%. The main reason for that is that these items can be recycled at no cost at regional drop-off depots. Only 5% of the properties using that. What we found out is that the collection contractor would tell us by the time they would get out there from a resident who would book it, it was already off the street. So there was nothing there for them to collect. So you're basically paying for a service that there's nothing at the curb. The municipalities that have implemented the discontinuation of large item collection services told us that as far as limiting the large item collection there, what we found is the properties that have either every other week or weekly garbage collection, the average is either 3 or 4, depending on whether they have weekly or every other week garbage collection. So the limit that we're looking at proposing of 4 is right within what other municipalities are doing. And approximately half of our municipal comparators are not even providing that collection service. They've gotten right out of the business of providing it. The contract savings there, again, depends on the size of the contract and that from municipalities there. But municipalities that have implemented it have said it's anywhere around $100,000 per year for savings to be expected from eliminating appliance collection. The 5th proposed collection option that we're looking at is changing the weekly garbage container limits for IC&I and mixed-use properties that are inside designated business areas from the current base level limit of 7 down to 4, as well as changing the weekly garbage container limit for mixed-use properties that are outside of designated business areas from 6 to 4. What we're trying to do there is to standardize the base garbage container limits across all sectors. Right now, IC&I that are outside of a designated business area are already at 4 per week per collection. So what we're trying to do is standardize that. That was some of the concerns that were raised to us in this go-around of consultation. What we found is that the average number of garbage containers that are placed out per week at the ICI and mixed-use properties is only 2 per property anyways, and mixed-use properties is the same thing. So these properties, although they have the ability to put out more containers, aren't putting it out. For the Port Colborne DBA, these next slides here just give you an indication of where the designated business areas are for Port Colborne. You have two different designated business areas in Port Colborne, the downtown one, as well as the Main Street area. Main Street basically running along the whole line. For the average one there, the numbers that we need to focus on are basically for garbage there, as I mentioned, it's around 2 per collection. But on organics, only 6% of those businesses are utilizing the organics program. For the mixed-use properties, the same thing, a little bit more on the number of garbage set out at 2.5, and a little bit more on our organics at 19%, but these because they have a residential component to them. For the outside there, 1.6 average containers that are being put out, and 17% are participating in the organics. So those are the main numbers that we focus on, is that they're not utilizing the diversion programs that they have, and that they don't need the full garbage container limits. What we're also asking municipalities to do is look at their enhanced collection services to see if what you're paying for now, because each enhanced collection services, so that's things like additional garbage container limits over and above the base, additional collection frequencies over and above once a week, street litter, front-end garbage. All of this is provided at a specific request of each local area municipality. And each local area municipality pays directly for that cost. So in the city of Port Colborne's case, your 2018 costs were just over $13,000, representing just a little bit less than 1% of your total annual waste management charge. That included things like street litter bins at your city facilities, the cost associated with disposing of that, the organics cart collection service in the business area, and public space recycling. So we were asking municipalities there to look at that and see, going forward into the next collection contract, whether that's services that you actually do need, and if you want that included in the next collection contract. The next portion of the presentation that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking briefly about the stakeholder consultation that the region did endeavor to do with regards to this proposed collection options. As I mentioned, we began consulting with the local area municipalities back in May. We met with public works officials. We went out to do council presentations, which we're doing now, and we're wrapping up this week. We also met with the organizations representing the businesses. On your slide there, you'll see all of the ones that are related to Port Colborne that we've met and discussed with, and we requested their comments by the end of November so we could get that into the formal report that was presented. We also met with the residents and the business groups themselves. That was done over the month of October and November. That included everything from doing telephone surveys, online surveys, public open houses, community booths, getting the information out to the public there. The online surveys, in total, the region received a record number of online surveys completed at 6,600. We also received a few multi-residential and IC&I, but that number seems small, but it's reflective of the number that are actually utilizing curbside garbage collection service. The consultant that was hired to undertake the work also did telephone surveys of low-density residential, so your single-family to 6 units. They completed 1,250 across all of Niagara region. We also received comments through social media, email and that, which were all taken into consideration when we were looking at the recommendations to go forward with the proposed collection options. So for Niagara region, here's just one of the examples of things we asked residents was if they had to choose between something like clear bags or every other week garbage collection. The responses that we had for there were for low density residential, multi-residential, and IC&I. Very similar, specifically when you look at Port Colborne's results. So Port Colborne is right in line with the region's results. We also then looked at the proposed collection options for every other week. 48% were in favor of it, 58% of it figured it would have some impact as well. On the container limits for the businesses, the same thing there. About 58% of it were felt it would, they could manage a reduction on it. In addition to that, the region is also, for the next collection contract, looking at an additional 4 weeks of dedicated leaf and yard waste collection and brush in the spring and fall. This would be consistent with just the urban areas only, as well as we're looking at the elimination of the current restriction on curbside garbage collection for IC&I properties outside the DBA. If you're an IC&I property inside the DBA, if you have private garbage collection, you can still utilize the region's curbside garbage, and we're looking at eliminating that restriction, provided that they're utilizing the region's recycling and organics programs. As well, we're looking at and requesting direction from each of the local area municipalities, because it's an enhanced collection service, of whether they want to provide bulky collection service to their multi-residential and mixed-use properties with residential. Right now, these properties don't get large item collection service, so that would be at the direction of each one of the local area municipalities. So what, like we said, we're doing is we want the comments and the position from each one of the local area municipalities on these proposed options that I've presented to you tonight. Verification of any additional enhanced collection services that you want, including things like the multi-res and mixed-use bulky collection, and verification if any municipalities would like a per-stop price for the in-ground litter and public space recycling collection as an enhanced service. At this point in time, I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councillor Bruno, then Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I'd like to thank Regional Councillor Butters for bringing the gentleman out, and the Mayor, and certainly Councillor Butters has been instrumental in getting us additional information upon request, so I'd like to thank her for that. Question I had often, this is a fear of the unknown, and you provide us with numbers from other municipalities once they've gone through the process, but the numbers are all geared towards either the cost savings or the reduction in garbage and the increase in recyclables. And one of the things it seems in the media you see is a lot of objection to the clear bag proposal, hence the region's position and sort of half step back and leaving that option there. I'm just wondering if anyone's done any post-implementation surveys in the communities that have had it done. So at the beginning, I'm concerned about it. Now that it's in, has there been any post-mortem surveys done?
Through the Mayor to the Councillor, just this past week, I followed up with the various municipalities that have had it in place for several years to do, as you were kind of like a post-mortem. So I talked to municipalities like the City of Ottawa, the region of Waterloo, who's now had it in place for a year, and said, have you had any issues or anything with residents? So for things like rodents or roadside dumping or anything like that, have you found any of that has been an increase for things like going with every other week garbage collection? Every one of the municipalities, there was that initial fear with them that was going to happen. It did not materialize. We had said to them, you know, this is a concern that we have here as well. We don't want to go into something that's that. And they said, you can allay to them that that's not anything that they need to be worried about. So that's based on their comments. I mean, everybody's going to be different. I mean, but that's what we have heard.
And that was on the clear bag too?
The clear bag, there is only one municipality, but the City of Markham, again, the same thing, got back to us with their comments in there. And I understand the document has been circulated through. We provided their exact comments that they provided us in their response.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Whitelaw. Again, thank you for the presentation. It was really quite informative. I have had a few people reach out to me. I have kind of a rule of thumb. If I get more than 10 people reaching out, I figure it's an issue, so I should follow up on it. And I have promised some of those that I would ask you this question tonight. It's something that did not show up on the survey options and on the various meetings that were had, the public meetings, and that was the idea of bringing all garbage collection in-house. So I would like to hear whether or not that was entertained. If so, what's being thought about that? If not, why not?
Through the mayor to the councillor there, the region is investigating, looking at in-house. That wasn't something that we looked at initially. We are talking to some of the municipalities that are currently providing, there's not a lot of municipalities that are still doing in-house garbage collection, but those ones there, again, same thing through best practice. We're talking to them to find out what things that they have, but that'll be coming in the report as well. That'll be going to council in March.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Botter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. Just a question on the additional 4 weeks of dedicated leaf and yard waste and brush collection, spring and fall sessions in the urban area only. Was there no demand in the rural area? I know you do it out there, people do put it out, but what was the rationale for doing the urban area only?
Through the mayor to the councillor there, exactly that. The demand is not there. It's either being dealt with on site or the collection there. What we're trying to do is right now, when we do leaf and yard waste collection, we send out the trucks there that will do it separately there. We get a different processing rate for it if it's just strictly leaf and yard waste, right, whether it's mixed in with the organics. We're trying to do more of a cost analysis there, so a cost benefit of having just leaf and yard waste, which is more economical to process on its own than through the green bin program.
Okay. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one more comment on the clear bags. Where my son lives, quite a ways north of Peterborough, they have a clear bag. The difference is you take it to the dump, right? So let me tell you that if you show up at the dump, the guy comes out, and if there's anything in that clear bag, you take it back, or you have to pull it out and put it in the proper thing. So when you're at home and you're going to throw that thing in that clear bag, and it's one of those marginal things that you're not sure whether, is it recyclable? You really find out whether it is or not, because when it's in that clear bag, you're euchred if you get there. So, you know, just a thought. I know probably your collection people aren't going to, well, maybe they will eyeball every clear bag. I don't know. But, you know, just to comment on that, if it did go to clear bags, if the people that are picking it up and they see something in there, would they leave the bag? I know some are in garbage cans anyways, but once in a while people put a bag up.
Through the mayor to the councillor there. Yes, through the city of Markham there, it's the same thing there. They will tag it and leave behind, and that's what the region would doing. We, of course, would be doing a process of working with residents and all that. It wouldn't be a hard line right away on that thing there. It'd be a public education and outreach trying to get residents to understand that there. But yeah, eventually their residents would, the garbage driver with that. Would they be going through and seeing every bag? No. This would be ones that are more obviously completely, residents have no recycling, no organics out there, and you can see it. It's all in the garbage bag there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Sorry, just one that you just mentioned it. So what happens if, because we may see, I know I've seen it, where somebody never puts out any recycling. Like garbage day, they've never put out any recycling. You're pretty sure it's going someplace, like in the bag. You don't ever track anything like that, right? That's just too cumbersome to, you know. Do you have the same drivers on all the time and somebody would notice that? I'm just wondering.
Right.
Through the mayor to the councillor there. The region does staff do outreach with that. If we find that residents are not participating in there, we will try to work with the resident to get them on board with regards to doing that. There is right now in the bylaw, the region's bylaw, if residents put in recycling organics, it could not be collected. Right now, of course, if it's in an opaque bag, you can't tell anyways there. The driver, like I say, with the clear bag program is to get residents to do that. Same thing with the every other week. It's to get them to utilize their recycling and organics program, because those materials will still be collected weekly. So the smelly stuff that residents may complain to you about will still be collected weekly if they're putting it out.
Okay. Councillor Beauregard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to
Mr. Whitlaw. My question is in regards to the clear garbage bag as well. One of the main reasons it seems like we're moving to why we would move to such to the clear bag is that residents would be motivated to by social pressure to put their garbage in the right spot or recycle or to encourage recycling. Would residents be able to still put those clear garbage bags into garbage bins and put them to the side streets? Because garbage bins typically aren't see-through, or would that be required?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's something that we would look at with regards to residents there. We've heard the same complaints from residents that if they have vermin or anything like that that get in there, apart from if you remove the organics, it shouldn't attract anything. There shouldn't be anything in that garbage bag that a rodent would don't want to get into. But if the clear bag is inside of a can that the driver can pull out to be able to get that, then that would be something that we'd be looking at as well.
Councillor?
Yeah, it's just that if we allow bins to continue being, to go forward with allowing them to place the clear bags into the garbage bins, it seems like it's counterintuitive. But it may be detrimental to some people because the bins are useful because you can put multiple bags into one bin. So it's convenience. But I'm just want some clarity on that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Baggio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Mayor. If this city does not want to go through the metal scrap, we're okay with not doing that. Like, I think our metal recyclers are doing a great job in Park Colborne.
You got that right.
Yeah. Well, 45 minutes is the length before it's picked up around here. So, but if we want to opt out of that, the city can opt out of that certain portion of the scrap metal rather than say Welland would want to keep it. We could still opt out in our municipality if I'm right.
Through the mayor to the councillor, scrap metal or the appliance collection there, that is a base service, so that's something that is provided across all municipalities. What we had looked at is that we had recommended it when we went forth to Public Works Committee, and that is that it's just not being utilized. The very thing that you said is it's not there, so why are we paying for a service that we're not getting? And this is when we receive all the input from council from the local area municipalities. Will look at that and say if each council says that no, we don't want that, that's what we'll be taking into consideration when we're writing our final recommendation. Council has still said to us they want us to continue in it and provided that, but if the direction is coming from municipalities that say that they don't want it, then that's something that we'll have to present in the final report to them as well.
Okay, thank you. One more question, Mr. Mayor, if I can. At first, I was totally against the clear bags, but the email I got today about the social pressure and stuff, Life and I were talking, and just by looking up and down your own street, you can tell which people have never recycled, never put out the green bin. It's probably got birdseed in it for all I know. But, we got to take care of the environment. I think it should be mandatory. We should recycle. We should, the compost as well, they never went over very well to begin with. I remember when the region came to each individual house, the big box, and put it in your backyard. And I think everybody tried it, but it's not that easy. But for the people that don't actually recycle, maybe the region could come along again, take a little survey, who is, who isn't, over a couple of weeks span, and just a friendly knock on the door and a friendly advice, but it has to be friendly. But just to educate the people a little bit more. Whether it goes through even through the schools, the public schools, where the kids are in school, and put the pressure, put the bug in the ear of the little kid, the 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and I'm sure it gets back to their mom and dad, and let them bug their parents to recycle more. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Brad?
Okay, through the mayor to the councillor. Those are great suggestions. The region does do an extensive outreach in that through the schools. We're constantly doing presentations to that, and you're absolutely right. That gets it right through the parents there when the kids come and say, why are you putting that in the garbage and that? So we do that as well. It's funny because one of the survey questions that we did, we asked residents about their usage for their recycling organics. We found over a 90%, and even through the online, so these are the ones where the residents were completing on their own, had indicated that they were utilizing the Blue Gray Box program, not so high on the organics program. So we did that survey leading up to the questions that we were talking to the residents about the proposed collection options. We wanted that information. So the final report that has been circulated to the area municipalities just this past week has got all those detailed results in there as well.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Okay, Councillor Walls.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Whitelaw. One of the second highest reason for you or for us looking at this is for cost savings or cost avoidances. Have you got a magnitude of the cost that we would be looking at here, and the cost savings, would that be going back to any other programs or back to reduction in taxes?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the cost savings for or avoidance for the collection contract is one component. There's also the environmental costs, so things like not having to site a new landfill site, treating the leachate, the methane. So the environmental benefits is another whole cost, the savings there that we have to consider as well when we're trying to extend the life of the landfill. When you're looking at the cost savings there, what we're trying to do is mitigate the waste management cost there. It doesn't go back to other divisions or anything like that. It's controlling what our future waste management costs will be. So as far as a handle there, the best we could do is look at what other municipalities realized in a savings and project that that's what we'll see as well. When the region did its tender for this collection contract, with the anomaly of Mterra, that we were seeing 1.2 million per year difference between a contractor bidding with weekly garbage collection versus every other week. So even back then, back in 2009-10, when they were bidding the contract there, they had shown savings that were going to be had. So Waterloo's getting 1.5 is pretty much in line with what we anticipate we're going to receive, maybe a little bit more in 2021, sorry, 2020 when the contract hits the street.
Councillor?
So we have a potential savings there of somewhere, say, $1.2 million. But where does that $1.2 million of savings go? If we've saved it, it's either going to be put back into a reserve where you'll use it for something else somewhere down the line, maybe in the waste management, maybe modernization of the waste landfills to do a cogen plant or something off of the methane. But it's still there. So I'm still wondering where those savings are going to go. As the population grows, the contributions to that continue to grow. So my question again is, where do those savings end up?
Ultimately, through the chair, ultimately those savings are for taxpayers because they're not paying for a collection contract that's more expensive to operate through each one. Each municipality, the way that the region apportions those costs is based on a percentage of households. So if Port Colborne is, say, 5% of the total region's household, that share of the cost for the collection contract is apportioned back to the municipalities. As a whole, though, the whole region would save on that. Port Colborne's portion is based on their percentage of households when they do that. So incrementally, you're absolutely right. Each year, that contract gets more and more expensive to operate because they get costs of CPI and that built into that contract going up. So if you're starting with a contract that's already right now at 20 million, and this contract is, say, 23 million by staying with weekly, if that's the option there, it will only incrementally be increasing at that price there. So it will cost taxpayers that much more to service a contract on a weekly basis than if they were paying for it on an every other week garbage collection basis. I'm not sure if that answers that question there, but like I say, there's also the environmental costs that are going to be there. There's going to be a new landfill that will eventually be acquired. If we implement things like every other week and we get the organics out of there, that keeps that landfill going that much longer.
Councillor?
Again, yes, the landfill goes longer, has a longer life expectancy. That means we have less cost going back out for new landfills and development of new landfills, less cost for acquisitions of properties and everything. But again, it just keeps adding up. The cost savings keep adding up as we extend our landfills, as we promote and as we convert people from throwing garbage out to protecting our environment and recycling it. The cost savings just keep going up and up, as do the costs go up and up, but the cost savings still end up being there somewhere. So actually, in reality, as our cost savings go up, our cost expenditures should go down. So, and I don't see the numbers adding up just yet.
If Brad, can I answer that? Only because both Councillor Butters and I have sat through these meetings. I think what you'll find is that once this contract goes out on what the municipalities, information coming up from us, the 12 municipalities, as well as what the regional council decides to go forward with a contract. At the time when we get the prices back, if there is a savings, I think you'll find that there'll be some direction from staff, no different than we get here, on where those savings could go, whether it's the garbage reserve, if you want to call it that, or waste management reserve with regards to future costs and things that you spoke about on the methane generation and things like that. Those discussions actually we've had at a very small level at the region so far, because I mean basically we're all new. So I think once this session is done and that comes forward to us, you're going to see ideas coming through from staff and from mayors and councillors from their own municipal councils on what we think maybe we should do with it. But you know, and we'll take ideas, I'm sure, from all the other municipalities that have gone this route, that have had savings after the contracts and how things have gone along. As Brad mentioned, some have been longer than others. Regional municipality of Waterloo, which is very similar to Niagara, has been, what, a year now, Brad? Yeah. Yeah, so you know, by the time we get into it, they'll have at least 3 years under their belt, so we can find kind of a best practices with them. And I'm sure Councillor Butters and I could bring all that information back and ask you guys, you know, kind of what you think that we can take back to regional council. But I mean, those are discussions we've had on a very small basis. But actually, 3 of your questions that were asked at regional council by other councillors. So you know, that's something we want to see. So we are hoping that we can see savings that, in essence, yeah, down the road, let's hope it does go back to the pockets of the ratepayer at some point. But what is the best route to do that? Okay. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Perhaps through yourself to Mr. Lee or the CAO. You talked about extending that deadline to February 2020, but I see a lot of municipalities have, I guess, for lack of a better word, played their hand or indicated what their recommendation are. Are you looking for that this evening? Is there a deadline to that? Do you want a staff report? Actually, Chris or the mayor, would you want a staff report before we give an answer to the region? So whether it's you, Brad, or Chris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council and to Brad as well. First of all, thank you, Brad, for putting all the numbers on the table for everybody. I know there was a lot there to try to digest in a short time frame. But that being said, it's the intent of city staff to bring a report back to Council at the next meeting with our recommendations based on what you've heard this evening, and also addressing some of the enhancements that we have currently in place and whether we want to continue those or not, or even add others. So those are things that will come forward to you, and that will be on the February 25th meeting.
Okay, Councillor? Good. Seeing no further questions, I know, Brad, last Wednesday when there was no garbage pickup because of the safety issues, schools were closed, the metal guy in the blue truck was in my neighborhood, full. So I know exactly what the region's coming at, why pick it up when by the time you get there it's gone. I mean, even some of our large items that my wife will call about to get out, they come through and take half of those sometimes. So you're right, it is, you know, at a lot of points it can be a waste of money where a truck shows up and there's nothing there. So I think we all understand that because I think we all see it. So with that said, Brad, thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you at the region on this one.
Thank you very much, Al. Thank you.
Okay. Our first delegation and only delegation this evening is Mr. Chris Comfort with regards to drainage and ditching in the Ward 4 area. Chris, come on up. Just press the little red button. And as we discussed earlier, you do have 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff, good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Chris Comfort. I live at 2855 Tammy Avenue in Gasline. I'm a longtime resident of Port Colborne, and I grew up in this area, and I've lived locally on and off for over 60 years. First of all, I'd like to thank councilors Bodner and Wells. I guess we started this ball rolling around election time. There was a lot of people campaigning in the area, and I thought it would be a good idea to, you know, there's going to be a change in council. So I addressed everyone who was running, and some of you are here tonight with a simple email to express our concerns of the ongoing ditching and drainage issues that we've experienced in our neighborhood for pretty much since we've been there for about 25 years. Around Christmas time, the two councilors for Ward 4 came out to discuss the issues with my wife and I, as well as Miss Alana Vanderveen, the ditching supervisor, and we met, and obviously Miss Vanderveen, she took our concerns. She explained that she was new, but she dug right into it. A few weeks later, she kept us all informed about what was going on, and it looks like, and I had to kind of change what I had written here tonight, but it looks like it's finally rolling, and I'd like to say we really appreciate it. I don't formally represent our neighborhood, but I know people in the neighborhood are going to be glad, and we'll be ecstatic when we see some work starting in the neighborhood. So thank you. I saw Mr. Lee was out with Alana. I think I saw you driving around, so they're familiar. I sent some pictures, but I'm sure you've seen this before, so I don't think there's any need to go too much further. So over the last little while, I started watching someone, I was told maybe we should watch the budget meeting on YouTube. So I did, and I gained a new appreciation for what you folks do here. It was tough for me to sit through that and try to pay attention. I'm sure it's tough for everyone to do the same. And you do it week after week, and the complaints, yeah, I kind of understand. There's a limited amount of money, and the complaints never stop, and the money, it's not an endless pit there. However, one thing that that I wasn't aware of, and I'm very concerned with, and I think a lot of residents are going to be concerned, is by pulling the ditching as well as the storm sewers out of the levy and putting it as a line item. And there was discussion on drains versus sewers, storm sewers. The Municipal Act, the Drainage Act, I actually read some of it, and it's clear why it's there, that the money comes from a different source, and we paid that about 16 years ago. We're part of the Oil Mill Creek Drain. All our properties were assessed, and we paid reluctantly, but understandably we paid. I heard the discussion here that the storm sewers are not that. Well, prior to 1880, I see that the storm sewers were drains. They are now storm sewers. So you had the discussion on who pays. Suggestion from the finance people on staff was that pulling $100 per resident, per property owner out would have a stream of revenue that's going to address these concerns, and the concerns are all legitimate, should be addressed. That the residents are going to be happy, it'll finally get done. Well, I can assure you the residents will be happy that it'll get done, but they're not going to be happy to see another line on the taxes. Way back when, and Councillor Butters brought Henry, and I can't remember Henry's name, we had a little meeting, and she walked through the neighborhood with us about 6 years ago. The ditching was completed, culverts were done, and at that time, Henry said the ditch wasn't there for us. The ditch was there to protect the roads, and the city owns the roads. I own a road in Ward 1, 2, and 3, as well as Ward 4, and everyone here does as well. So I can't see how pulling the ditching out and giving it directly to the local people how matter you do it, is going to be fair, it should be, I feel it should be on the levy. It's not, we're protecting the city's roads. You know, the roads are there for everyone to enjoy. You know, I heard there was a complaint about Ward 4. If you get a complaint from a Ward 4 person about the sidewalks in town, why do we have to pay for sidewalks? You should tell them they can enjoy the sidewalks. But we enjoy the roads all over the place. It's everybody's roads. I think it should remain in the levy. Pulling them out is going to get it addressed, right? But you should have a different plan to address it. A budget that doesn't get moved to keep the levy down. You know, watching this, it looks like you're fixated on the percentage, and that's good. You want to keep that levy increase as low as possible. But I don't think you should do it at the expense of a line item. When you see a line item, and I call and complain, well, that's not really a tax. Well, the bottom line is what I look at. You know, our taxes are $6,200, and that's what I look at. I don't care if region takes this, levy takes that, school board takes something else. What I look at is the bottom line. And to simply remove it and put it back in, and overall the increase appears to be slightly more this year. But as that budget increases, it's going to go up. So saying that, I would just hope you put a lot of thought into it and the concerns. And I don't know if there's going to be a lot of complaints, because I don't believe a lot of people in the city watch 8 hours of YouTube budgeting. And I think if they did, they'd get their eyes open. And I really feel we've got our eyes open, and I hope I'm not missing a point somewhere, which is entirely possible. So I had a whole bunch of stuff about how it, you know, you said it's fair to pull it out. We do a lot of things with market value assessment. And I'm sure when that came in, people said it's not fair, but it's inherently unfair that I pay less money than my neighbor who generates 1/3 of the waste that we do. That we don't use the library, but I pay $70-some a year. Or the museum, we pay $50-some a year. But I understand why we pay that, because there's people out there who can't bear the full cost of museums and arenas, and we spread the pain around for the betterment of the people who can't afford, for the people to enjoy the libraries who may not be able to. I don't use the library. My wife reads a lot of books. We donate books back to the library, you know. So I'm not complaining, but the market value assessment is what we have. It's not fair, but I think by pulling the ditching out makes everything even more unfair. I think the whole city should be responsible for all the ditching, all the storm sewers, and probably minus the drains. So saying that, I'd just like to end it here. And really, honestly, thanks very much, both councillors. Mayor Steele, you're around campaigning, and you know, I think everyone who did knock on the door took our concerns and actually ran with it, and it appears something's going to be done to staff. We really appreciate it. We enjoy Port Colborne. You know, everyone here I'm sure does, and you know, I don't like complaining. We've been called bell acres. Apparently, belly acres is the term that they use for us.
I haven't heard that.
And I certainly don't want to appear that I'm just here complaining. We really do appreciate the effort you guys have put into this. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And just with regards to the municipal drainage, Friday I sat down with staff, and I know other councillors have, you know, with our plan, and you know, we really talked about 10 drains that we're working on, and we've actually, I came out of that meeting with some information that, you know, about sharing services with other municipalities to get the drainage issue moving quite a bit faster, because as Councillor Bodner said the other day, sometimes you can't repair a ditch until the drain's fixed, and yours being one of them. And I know staff has some pretty or some very good ideas on alleviating a lot of the issues that you guys run into up in that area. And it's not just Bell Acres; it's all the way down the line to the lake. With you know, because Port Colborne is so flat, it's tough to move the water. So I know staff's coming forward with that. And as we talked earlier, I mean, a lot of people don't understand that there's been some drains that we talked about when I sat on council in the past, you know, 7, 8, 10 years ago, I thought were completed, but they're not, because there's all these next kick at the can. After a decision is made to go forward, they go to this tribunal, that tribunal, a judge, or a referee. There was one that's a very small case where it was a bit of a few trees that needed to be moved in order to fix the municipal drain. It was 4 years. I mean, that's the issue here, is the red tape in it. But, you know, our staff's moving forward as fast as they can. But I think if we can go forward with our fellow municipal, you know, specifically Fort Erie and Waynfleet, with some ideas that we had coming out of that meeting, and my discussions with Fort Erie so far, that we can move things along hopefully faster, because there is a lack of engineers that do municipal drains in Ontario, and we have some really good guys that are working down here now. We want to try to keep them around. So, questions, Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Comfort, thank you again for all that you had to say tonight, and I think you'll be happy to hear that I was actually going to do this through councillors' items, but maybe I'll just ask right now. I was going to ask that councillors support a staff direction, actually to direct the Director of Engineering and Operations to form a working group to take care of these issues, to take an in-depth look at drainage, municipal drains and ditching, and come up with either a different and better way of doing that, moving them along quicker, and possibly work with the treasurer to see how that may be able to fit as far as how we finance that, but to take a look at how we could maybe do it better. So can we do this now, or should I wait till?
Well, wait till that. Let's finish with Chris.
Items? Okay, so that will be coming.
Yeah,
there you go.
So, is that it? Any other questions? No, not from you. No, Councillor Bodner.
Thanks, Chris, for coming out. Chris has a serious problem there, and his neighbor does also. This isn't just, you know, aesthetics, weeds in the ditch type thing. There's serious water that needs to be moved there, and I think Chris has probably gone through a few sump pumps in his lifetime, trying to keep that water out of his house. So this is not just aesthetics. This is serious stuff for a lot of people out there, and I will say that one thing Chris did mention in here is that maybe he thought he was coming up close on the list to having those ditches done. I'd like to ask, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lee, is it realistic that it will be done this year, or we still got to do more work on the other end of the drain?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. The contractor has been hired to clean the Oil Mill Creek, which is the watershed that Mr. Comfort is a resident in. And with that, as we had discussed before, then follows the roadside ditching. So if that gets completed in the spring, hopefully or we're actually hoping that if we get another freeze, it stays solid for a while, we can actually go in there and do the work now. The only issue is if that doesn't happen, then we have to wait for the critters to get out of the way, and that puts some restrictions on us, so we won't be able to get in there until after the first part of July. But that would be the latest that we would be in there doing the work on the oil mill, and then the roadside ditching would follow thereafter.
Okay, Councillor, go ahead.
So one more, I can just assure Chris that the next budget meeting, the question's already been asked, but we'll be looking at, do we have the money there to do that, okay? And if we don't, how are we going to get the money in there? So that will be taken care of at the next budget meeting, and hopefully we can come to some agreement if we don't have it to up that a little bit.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
My understanding of the Oil Mill Creek drain is we pay. Did we pay the full cost of that?
Chris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Comfort. The Oil Mill Creek drain is in the process of being maintained, as we call it. It has the assessment schedule that was established back about 8 years ago, which had a billing on it at that time. This maintenance that is being done in the next few months will also be a bill back to the watershed. So once that's completed, we go through the process. The grant applications go out to OMAFRA. The billings get generated. That usually takes about a year after the actual construction. And then we have finance do their fancy billings, and then we do the collections. And then in the meantime, while that's all been happening, we're doing the roadside ditching.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd just like to comment. I think and you've been out there, I think if you clean the drain, like I've walked it, it's a mess. I think it's going to solve a lot of the problems where we are.
Yes, Chris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Comfort. The drain itself actually ends before Bell Acres, but the drainage channels that go through Bell Acres and in the roadside ditching that subsequently drain into that are part of the ditching program itself. So that will be done under the ditching program. The actual drain maintenance, which ends just south of Bell Acres, will be cleaned under the municipal drain cleaning program.
So to move their water out of their ditches at a faster rate, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay. So the mayor's report. So, as most of you know, because Michelle was sending out all kinds of information all weekend with regards to Sports Fest, great weekend for the city of Port Colborne. All the venues and organizations that ran events, we thank them, but they were all busy. We had our City of Port Colborne team in the Mayor's Cup. We made the finals. We fell a little short. It is nice to see that, 20 years ago when this event started, Councillor Bodner and I played on the hockey team back then, and we were a lot younger, and I'm stepping out being the older guy now. I was the third oldest or second oldest on the team, but we had a slew of young guys. One guy sitting right here. That actually we made them do all the skating. So we lost to Grimsby. It was a good game. We took a big 2-0 lead, and then ended up losing 6-2 or 6-3, something like that. So, but it was fun, and all the municipalities in the 4 divisions we had a great time. I received some emails today from different mayors and some of their workforces with regards to their teams and how enjoyable they do look forward every year to this tournament. So. We're looking for big things ahead. So we'd like to thank everyone who came out to participate in any activity around the city, and those that came out to cheer on those participating. You'll hear a lot of those monikers coming up through Michelle's office up here on the 3rd floor. Also to our staff, volunteers, community organizations, businesses, and sponsors that contributed to the success of this event this year in our community. Now it's time to rest up, and believe me, I am tired today after 4 games in 2 days, to start planning for 2020. So staff has some great ideas to expand the event, and I know we've got partners that want to come forward with some additional events in the coming next year or even the year after that they have approached staff, so we'll be working on that. This Friday is a PA day at the area schools, and Monday is family day for most people. There are activities happening starting this Friday through Monday at the Valley Health and Wellness Center, and as well as at the Port Colborne Public Library. So be sure to check out the activities going on that you can participate in with your family, and just go to our city website to find out what's happening in Port Colborne over the PA Day and Family Day weekend. We have the radon test kits. So for those residents who couldn't make it to our open house last week, we still have a few of the kits, which look like there's a radon tester. You get a kit in a bag. It gives you all the instructions of where to put it in your house, how to activate the online survey and put in your start date. I picked mine up today to do my home. You must activate your kit by this Wednesday to be part of the 100 Radon Test Kit Challenge. And if you'd like more information about radon and the challenge, go to www.takeactiononradon.ca. Test kits are available on the 2nd floor here at City Hall. Or you can also contact the 2nd floor and they'll direct you up here for those. Our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Last week we mailed out our interim tax bills, which you should be receiving this week. I received mine today. So on the back of the envelope is some information on how to participate. We ask that you complete our Parks and Recreation Master Plan survey. All you have to do is visit www.portcolborne.ca/page/PRMP, or pick up survey at any city facility, or if you're so inclined, scan the coding on the back, and that'll take you right to the survey. So great idea by staff putting it there. As I said, I received my tax bill today, and there it was. So that's great. And we want to hear from everybody with regards to the future of our parks and recreation here in Port Colborne. And as Michelle told me to say, your participation is important to the success of this survey. Thank you, councillors. Any questions on the mayor's report? Nothing. Councillor Butters, regional councillors report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glad to be here. All that's going on this week, budget on Thursday, we're back at it. Next week, standing committees. The week after, it will be our council meeting. And of course, if there's any questions that I can get answers for you, I'm here to take those questions down. That's
Any questions to the regional councillor? Okay. You can also send her an email at any time or give it to me and I'll make sure Barb gets it. So great, Barb. Thanks. We look forward to working with this week and next. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Okay, councillors' items. Councillors' issues or inquiries. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two items for this evening. One, first through you, is what I've already said, that staff be directed, or the Director of Engineering Operations, rather, be directed to convene a working group. Then that group would review the current practices and explore options for future practices to take care of municipal drainage and ditching.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Okay, and item number two is actually through you again to Chris Lee, and it has to do with possibly finding some traffic calming options or some resolution to the issue we have at Kalali Street East and Elizabeth Street. Again, there's been yet another accident there. This one, again, personal injury. People went to the hospital, but they did come home within the next day. So the injuries were minor, but they were still injuries. So now we have injuries from pedestrians, cyclists, and for the most part, though, it's usually vehicle. So it's happening again. I understand the reasoning for stop signs not being the preferred option, but there is a problem there, and we have to come to some solution for it. So possibly you could bring some ideas to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Desmarais. What I will do actually is I'll reach out to some of the regional staff that actually were here today with regards to the traffic scenario, because they are the experts in that field, specifically in intersection design and things of that nature, and see if they have any new ideas or new methodologies, or if they have some recommendations. And what I will do then is get staff to maybe get a report back to council with some recommendations on what comes out of those discussions, if that's fine with you.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, staff. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, can you just do a formal motion with regards to direction to staff on your first topic there?
Sure, I can. Okay, I would move that the Director of Engineering and Operations convene a working group to revise, to review current practices and.
I'm not sure I'll support this. And you know, I'm passionate about ditches and drains. This is, you know, Harry's getting into it up to his neck, whether he wants to or not. And but I wonder if you'd consider putting that off to the next meeting. I know Harry and I are sitting down with staff Friday afternoon, actually, on this very subject. And just from being involved in a number of years, I think some of the holdup, like the mayor had said, is that the drains, you know, we're limited by what we can do. So I know staff has a limited amount of resources as far as time and everything like that. I just don't want to see them have to do something that, you know, will be corrected now that we're getting a bunch of drains out of the way. I don't know whether the timing is right, or, you know, I think we'll know better maybe when we sit down and talk to them. I'm all for the feeling of it and the concept of it, but I just don't know whether it'll be a burden on staff. So.
CAO wants to chime in on this.
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Desmarais, I think I would concur with the comments from Councillor Bodner for a couple of reasons that you might not be aware of, and it might change your mind on this. So as City Council knows, I have a monthly meeting with every director, and we set out goals and we monitor those goals. And today, coincidentally, was the day that the Director of Engineering and I established some pretty substantial, I guess, goals for 2019. And one of those goals focuses around ditching and drainage and how we're going to attack some of the issues that have been brought forward by the public. The Drainage Act does not leave us very much flexibility on municipal drains. Municipal drains are different than ditches. Sometimes they're the same, but they are governed by different legislation. And we can't go, I know council has heard this in the past, I'm not good at Latin, ultra vires above the law. We can't make a law that's stronger than the provincial law. But we do have our own policies on ditches and roadside ditches, and we do have, I guess, goals set for attacking drains and ditches in 2019 and beyond. And I know that's going to include the ward councillors. So I think that this might be something that takes care of itself as the year marches on, and maybe we can monitor it through reporting back to council rather than having a working group or a subcommittee.
Okay, Councillor, then can maybe we wait till next meeting and you can speak with the two ward councillors after their meetings?
I'm absolutely perfectly fine with that. Just to explain though, this is really only coming out of the fact that there was a lot of discussion at the last budget meeting, and it looked like we were going to jump the gun and decide something very quickly that should actually have a lot of in-depth investigation. So that's what this was about.
That's fine.
Just making sure that nothing happened quickly.
Okay. So then we'll just hold off on that then for now? Okay, is that all right with everybody? Yes, Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just don't want to dampen the enthusiasm here because I tell you what, above what I said, if it's a lack of money or it's a lack of staff being able to do it, I would sure like you to support at the next budget meeting to correct that situation. But until we really find out what we're up against, we'll wait and see. Thanks.
I never got a second. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. She can withdraw, which I think she's done. So she's withdrawn. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. I think we all understand. Yeah.
So I will withdraw. And
yeah,
that
that's
will
fine.
Just solve that? Okay.
You're all fine? Yeah, okay. Good. Thanks, Councillor. Appreciate that. See how well we get along here. I love this. Councillor, actually I had Councillor Clayliff, then Councillor Bodner, or Councillor Bruno.
I just wanted, and I hope it's the right place to ask this, Mr. Mayor, but it's just regarding the crossover presentation tonight. I guess I knew everything they were going to say, and I understand it. I understand everything that went on about it, but I don't feel it's going to answer a lot of the questions. The questions that I'm getting, and I know that Ms. Premi was here tonight, was involved with it. She has left, but I feel badly that the answer I guess I'm looking for is people are saying to me it's not as much about seeing it, and all of those questions are there, but on top of that is that big question of why it got moved. And I've talked to them about the fact that the costs entailed with it and all the different pieces from what my understanding was from Mr. Lee. Is there anything else that I can talk to them about? Because, I'm sure that some of the councillors themselves, other ones beside myself, have had emails saying, like, move it, we need to move it. And I'm just looking for some direction on this of how to make them understand the thought and the process that went into it since I wasn't here.
Chris?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Clayliff, and actually to all of council, to sort of give a brief history on the process that happened, because a number of you weren't at the table when all these decisions were made. So initially the thought process was that public came forward and they wanted to have a crossing at the Clarence Street intersection with Catherine. It was back and forth, was it the east side, was it the west side? The initial thought that it would be the west side because the petition that was originally circulated had individuals that were signed up and they thought that would be a great place. That being said, we went back and looked at the drawings. We had discussions with the traffic people, particularly with the regional staff. We had them look at the intersection. We had them analyze what was at the intersection existing. And then to accommodate the signal on what would be the west side of the intersection would involve a complete rebuild of that part of the intersection, which was substantially more than what the budget would support. The budget was approximately $30,000, based on just putting in the signals. And when you did a look at the design and the actual, as you saw in the plan that came up on the screen, it actually makes sense where it went because the crossing time was less, the road was obviously narrower, there was already a calming scenario in that section of the intersection on the east side. And actually, when we brought that up and mentioned it to council in a public forum, that this is what the intent was, if I remember right, Councillor Bodnar actually stood up and said that he would appreciate it that if the crossing distance was shorter because of mobility issues. The shorter you can make that crossing distance, then the less time it takes for that person to be in traffic. So that was the main driver behind moving it to the east, and strictly safety, because that made the intersection safer for pedestrians. The second scenario that we didn't realize at the time, but then it became what we consider a bonus, is that it actually linked the municipal parking lots. So now a person who was using that crossing and had used the municipal parking lots had direct access to that and didn't have to cross another section of the intersection to get to the crosswalk. So the way it was going to be to the west is a person that was using the Market Square or the parking lot, the city parking lot on Princess Street, would have to come down the east side of Catherine and then cross an intersection without any delineation or any control, and then, as I would say, dance in traffic through the crossing. This way they can access, and it allows them access to either the north or the south side of the downtown core, where most of the parking is going to be happening. So when people leave their vehicles, and there's going to be some on-street parking, obviously, but that number is much less compared to what parks in the Market Square. So those are some of the deciding factors in moving it to the east side versus the west side, just because of the safety factor and also keeping it within the budget that council had established for us.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Actually, that helps a lot. And seeing the pictures tonight actually helped me to realize that a lot of the complaints have been about the trucks parking in front and the visual acuity of when you're looking that way. When I look at that now, I say to myself, if they were on the west side where they originally wanted, it would be even worse. They wouldn't be able to see them. So it helps me when I'm talking with some of the...
Thank you, Councillor. And I know we have Sherry Hansen here. Sherry, I know where that truck was parked was actually parked illegally. The truck unloading zone for the Market Cafe building, not just the Market Cafe, but that whole complex of 3 commercial units is actually on Catherine Street, which would be a safer situation with regards to sight lines for the crossing. So, and I know being down there that there's people that park their cars in the truck loading zone or unloading zone, and then there's trucks that unload because they can't park there and they go in the vehicle parking in front of the meat shop is the primary one, to unload because they may come around the corner and somebody's parked. So, I mean, maybe it's a lot more diligence on our part to ticket people that are parked illegally in truck unloading zones, and then also with trucks parking in non-unloading zones, and they're there for a reason. It's all safety and sight lines. So, is there a comment you can make on that?
Yes, Mr. No, I'm stop this one.
No, you can sit down.
All right. Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's not an infraction for a commercial vehicle to pull into a regular stall and unload. You're not actually parked when you're actually engaged in loading or unloading passengers or goods. So if we have some loading zones within the downtown core, but they're not at every location. So a vehicle can pull up, a truck, a commercial vehicle, can pull into any of those areas in a parking stall and unload to a particular store. So that's not an actual offense. The visibility issue that they had been discussing had been noted when I was looking at the intersection, and I had talked to one of the truck drivers there, and that is the prime location where he unloads. There are some other locations that they can unload in certain areas, and we can talk to a couple of the businesses in that area and see if we can have that offset once some of the construction is finalized there.
Sure.
But staff will keep an eye on it, of course.
Okay, good. But I know there are cars that park in the truck unloading zone, and they're not supposed to, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Council? Good, thank you. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Aquilinian isn't here tonight, but maybe through to the CAO. And I know Councillor Demery was there, the Radon seminar at the Bocce Club. One of the best run mini seminars on anything I've ever heard within city, or was concise. I think Mr. Rogers should be congratulated for A, taking the initiative to do this. I think we're the only municipality in Ontario that did it. I think with his training and his passion about the issue, it was concise. There was every question answered. Every citizen that was there nodded, was happy, brought scientists down from Ottawa. So kudos to him and his department for that initiative. Just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, appreciate the kind words and the comments on staff. I will make sure that gets passed along to the CBO, Todd. Mrs. Henson is acting in Dan's absence and can probably pass that along as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, councillors? Great, thanks. Any staff responses to previous councillor inquiries? Anything this evening, guys? Seeing none. Consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Demery, item 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I'll just read the whole motion out. This is a motion for to create an affordable housing strategy. Whereas access to adequate housing is a fundamental human right. It's paragraph 25(1) of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Ontario Rights Commission Human Rights Perspective on Housing Supply of January 2019. Whereas Port Colborne is fast approaching a housing crisis with alarming occupancy rates, soaring housing costs, and stagnating incomes. This is coming from the Ontario Association of Food Banks Quarterly Report, September 2018, from the Port Colborne Primary Rental Market Statistics of 2016, from the Key Housing Indicators for Port Colborne, July 5th, 2017, and from Where Will We Live, Ontario's Rental Housing Crisis of May 2018. And whereas the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee and the Social Determinants of Health Committee, both being committees of this council, have each placed housing as a priority to their mandate, and whereas designing and implementing a poverty reduction strategy has been included in the Port Colborne Strategic Plan, CAO Report 2015-47, and whereas affordable and adequate housing has been directly linked to poverty reduction, that's from the Wellesley Institute, Poverty is a Health Issue. It's Time to Address Housing and Homelessness of October 10th, 2013. Therefore, be it resolved that the corporation of the City of Port Colborne does acknowledge that housing is a human right and that the municipal government has a role to play in the gradual realization of this right for all residents of Port Colborne, and that the Director of Planning be directed to engage with stakeholders to create a coordinated municipal affordable housing strategy for the City of Port Colborne, with the goal to establish a definition for the term affordable housing and to create affordable housing options across the housing continuum, with a report due back to this council to include a high-level view of timelines and targets on or before May 27, 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Seconder. Councillor Beauregard. Councillor, anything else to add?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that this is something that we need to do as a city to move forward to getting a healthier community, to building a healthier community. But I did come across something from the Canadian Institute of Planners with regards to their healthy community policy, and it was for me moving, and it had a great impact, and I just want to have everyone hear this. And basically, this is what their understanding of healthy communities is evolving. And it's evolving as of the knowledge of social, economic, and ecological determinants of public health develops. In this policy, a healthy community is defined as a place where healthy, built, social, economic, and natural environments give citizens the opportunity to live to their full potential, regardless of their socially, culturally, or economically defined circumstances. A healthy community allows people to come together to make their community better for themselves, their family, their friends, their neighbors, and others. A healthy community creates ongoing dialogue, generates leadership opportunities for all, embraces diversity, connects people and resources, fosters a sense of community, and shapes its own future. And that's the basis for why I brought this motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions to Councillor? Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Demery. Did you consult with staff at all to see whether the May deadline was feasible or not?
I did not, but I had already told Mr. Aquilina about this, so he didn't say anything. If that's not feasible, I would imagine they will come back and ask for that to be changed, but.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Borgard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery. When we talk about housing, it seems like quite a broad definition. So what do we mean by housing? Is it affordable housing? Is it owning housing? Is it renting housing? Like, what exactly are we talking about?
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Beauregard, the motion is an affordable housing strategy.
Does that
and that's
include,
across the housing continuum.
So is that, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demery, does that include renting? Is that what we're talking about? Renting or owning? I'm just want to make that clear.
Both.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is both.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Yes, thank you. I like the motion, very supportive. Just one area in there, I don't know if you were able to lift this off another motion, but in that first line of your second paragraph, Port Colborne is fast approaching a housing crisis with alarming occupancy rates. If you turn to your slide 70 and 71, they talk about low vacancy rates. So I'm just wondering if what was meant there is a housing crisis with alarmingly low vacancy rates. In particular, if you go to slide 70 and 71. It's not the occupancy we're worried about, it's having enough vacancy, right?
Yeah, and if I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, it actually said both, that the rates were alarming and due to the low occupancy, low vacancy rates, and the occupancy rates are they're alarming.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, councillors. At this time, our EDO is working with stakeholders with regards to affordable housing in Port Colborne, as well as the mayor's office. I'm working with both the committees. I was at the Social Determinants of Health Committee the other day where we brought this forward, and it was well received by those members. You know, it was obviously unanimous that this was coming forward with Councillor Demery. I'm also working with those committees, with staff, and also stakeholders, our community stakeholders that are already here, as well as with the EDO in the developers, those type of stakeholders that want to come in and build here are looking for alternatives to just the everyday kind of home. So we have some things that will be coming forward with it. So it's good that this all ties in together. I mean, a number of us did campaign on this with regards to affordable housing. You know, I'm glad that the councillor took this upon herself to bring forward and move on this. So with that, no further questions. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Bodnar for item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division, Report 2019-12, subject amendment to the Zavitz Municipal Drain, Shirkston North Branch, East and West Trail Branch Drains Report.
Thank you, councillor. Can I get a seconder to that? Councillor Wells, Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bear with me. I got this new iPad and it's, well, it's challenging. Apparently if I do that, and it'll give me, no it won't. So I just want to get to the page I want, and apparently there's a way to do it. It's not that way. I want to get to page 210 for everybody that wants to get there. Go ahead and I will join you when I get there. Oh, I'm there. Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, this has been going on for some time, this one. The mayor alluded to challenges with drains. Would you say this is a kind of outside the norm of the length of time this one took?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. Actually, this particular issue that the report is addressing is that after construction has started and the contract had been awarded,
right.
The contractor came across some issues in the field that hadn't been identified in the report. Subsequently, staff has gone back to the engineer and done a resubmission to correct those issues, for lack of a better term. And to do so, they have to go through the tribunal process. This is actually the 4th tribunal hearing for this particular drain, and the tribunal hearings have actually gone on for the last 6 years.
Yeah. So just, and I think this is important for new councillors that may not have sat through some of the different drain struggles we've had. This is not an easy thing, and it'll take one thing. And lucky we found this because it will make a difference. But I just want to give kudos to staff, and I think I've done this on this other one, but as much for the new councillors as maybe somebody watching, if you go to page 210 of this report, you're going to see something that is pretty amazing. And this is our staff. I think it was Henry at the time, and whoever was involved in it. I think Alana may have been involved in that. I don't know whether you were, Chris, at that time, but if you just look at that second paragraph, and it says that staff success in having weeb engineering fees assigned to the Zavitz drain reduced from $21,000 to $11,000. That's savings to the people in that drainage shed. And the AMEC engineering fees assigned to Port Colborne portion of the Zavitz drain reduced from $52,000 to $9,000. This is our staff picking up on this stuff. That's huge. And I think that was, yeah, that was it. This is one we did in conjunction with Fort Erie. So there was, you know, stuff that was put on us that really wasn't our charge. And the due diligence of our staff picked up on that. That is huge. I just wanted to highlight that. And also just to say that, you know, if you think staff is somehow not putting all their efforts into these drains, it takes years to get some of these done. So I just want to highlight that. And thank staff for what they did on this one.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions with regards to item 3? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Well, I think that's it. It's only 2, right? It's only 2, right? Any notices of motion this evening? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Danch is away on holidays, so I'll go to Councillor Wells. Councillor Wells, seconder. Councillor Desmarais, all in favor? That's carried. So we are now going to the council portion of our meeting. So I will call this meeting to order. Introduction of addendum items. Clerk?
They're not this evening.
Thank you. Can I have the confirmation of the agenda? Councillor Bagu, Councillor Bodner, all in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest? Adoption of minutes adoption of minutes. Regular meeting of council 02-19 held on January 28th, 2019. Mover and seconder. Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Desmarais, all in favor? That's carried. Any items requiring separate discussion? Mover to move the items this evening. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Wells, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. There are no proclamations. We have the minutes of the board for the public library meeting of December 11th. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Clayliff, Councillor Beauregard, any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Consideration of bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Number 6641-05-19, being a bylaw to appoint Paul Marsh of EWA Engineers Incorporated for the preparation of an amended engineer's report for the Zavitz Municipal Drain situated in the town of Fort Erie and the city of Port Colborne and to rescind bylaw number 5606-36-11. Bylaw 6642-06-19 being a bylaw to establish a committee of adjustment and repeal bylaws 3580-6-98 and 3844-130-99 and 4479-10-04. Bylaw 6643-07-19 being a bylaw to appoint members of council to the Committee of Adjustment. Bylaw 6644-08-19 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a license agreement between the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne and Yvonne Mosso regarding 104 Fraser Street, Port Colborne. 6645-09-19 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting on February 11th, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Demeray, Councillor Wells. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Just before we move into closed session, the next regular meeting of council will be on the Monday, the 25th of February, and we are still waiting through Peter with regards to the province, the OMPF funds, when our next budget meeting will be. But our next regular meeting of council is on the 25th of February. So, motion to go into closed session. The council do now proceed into closed session in order to address the following matters concerning Seaway Lands divestiture pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wells, Councillor Bruno. All those in favor? That's carried, and we will move to Committee Room 3.